introduce a very interesting opening that is Halloween Gambit, and it actually comes from Four Knights opening. So this is Four Knights opening where both sides defend the knight at the very first beginning, and usually the most common move after knight f6, that is pawn to d4, white starts to control the center, offer a pawn exchange at the center. But a very interesting move. This is not a very popular opening, but if you don't know how to deal with that, if you play with black, you might see some problem. So knight e5, white sacrifice the knight with the e5 pawn. And you can see on the right hand side, this is called Halloween Gambit. It's very spooky. So we can take the knight. Why not? Taking the knight, we have won some material. And instead, white pushed pawn to d4. And this is why white is sacrificing knight, because it can have very good control at the very start beginning. So our knight is being attacked, and look at the squares the knight is able to go. Knight c4 is not a good space, it will be captured, and knight g4 is not good as well, because if white pawn push to e5, we have to move the f6 knight and we'll lose the g4 knight. The only two square is either g6 or c6. So which one is better, or which one is better? So it turned out to be knight g6 is the best move. And the reason is, if we move knight to c6, white can keep pushing the pawn to d4, d5. So white can expand its area, its territory on the center, and also that attack on our knight. White can gain some tempo at the center. So this is something we need to avoid, because we already lost one move after d4. So the best move turned out to be knight g6, move knight to g6. And here white could probably push pawn e5, and since the knight, c3 knight is controlling these two squares, and we have to retreat our knight to ga. I mean, we won some material, so that's some compensation we need to accept. Okay, so white could probably divide the bishop to c4, and targeting at f7, potentially queen to f3, aiming at our f7. And the best move, so if you look at the suggestion from the engine, the best move from black is c6. And the reason is quite simple, preparing for d5. So we still need to fight back at the center. And the engine still give rate the position is minus, which means black is better. So as long as we can solve the problem, I think because of the advantage in the piece value, I think black is better than its opponent. And if white move the queen to e2, and we can divert the bishop, ping at the c3 knight to slow down the development of white pieces. And also we can exchange with the knight if that's what we need, if that's necessary. And also there's no any other square to move the bishop better than bishop b4. If we move bishop to e7, it will block our g8 knight, so bishop b4. And white castle, we can develop this knight to e7, or we can push the pawn to I feel like pushing the pawn, we will losing the pawn with en passant, so maybe move the knight to e7. That's the best move. And yeah, then we can castle, so make our king safe. So that's the plan. We can deal with the problem at the center. So if we move the knight to c6, so if we place white can push the pawn, and we have to move the knight back to the center. Otherwise, we have to move it to ba, and that's really bad regards with like piece development opening. So if we control the center and f4, our knight has to be pushed to g6 anyway, and e5. So we still need to move the knight to g8. So in this case, white expand its territory at center. These two pawns are really, really strong, and white can keep pushing the pawn. We take that, and if we divide the queen, the knight goes to b5, aiming for c7. So in this position, black is still better according to the engine, but if you are a chess beginner, it's still very hard for you to navigate, because it involves a lot of complicated calculation in this position. So white is going to attack your king and fork the rook. So on the other hand, we might thinking about fight back the center and also developing our pieces in a good way. So this position is super complicated, and I would not recommend you like choosing this direction if the Halloween gambit is very to you. I think this variation is new to most of the chess players, and I checked the database of chess.com. So very tiny portion of games people play this opening. So okay, so back to this position. So the learning for this one. So the best position for the knight go to is G8, G6, because if white pushes on D5, we don't need to like move the knight again. So which can make our piece development faster. That's it. Thank you for watching.